Well, good morning, everybody. Pastor Rob here from South Lake Church for another Immerse Daily Devotion, where we gather together reading through Immerse Beginnings, the first 5 books of the Bible. And we meet Saturdays at Noah's Art Cafe at 8 a.m., a chance for people to gather together who've been reading through the week, watching these devotions, or just curious about taking a step of reading the Bible. And our goal at South Lake, our relationships with Jesus, one of the best ways to have a relationship with Him is read the Word. So we want to invite you to be a part of that. Well, our devotion today continues our story going through the patriarchs, the founders of our faith, all the way from the beginning with Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. And our story sees that Jacob is sent off by his mother, Rebekah, to go find a wife. Esau's wives currently have issues with Rebekah, wives and mother-in-laws. And Isaac makes a point to Esau, you need to marry outside these Canaanite women. And this is key. Again, they don't like the idea of their sons, and I make an argument for their daughters too, to marry people of this land. So with Esau, it gets suggested, marry a wife from a daughter of Ishmael. So again, Abraham, Isaac, Esau, Abraham, Hagar, Ishmael, they get united together through another marriage. So again, it keeps the line of Ishmael is part of the history and all the things that happened throughout the whole Old Testament. So that's a quick little couple paragraphs to bypass, but there's a reason why it brings up Ishmael again. It brings the fact that there's something tying in there, and that's going to cause struggles later in the narrative. Jacob gets sent to go find a wife. Similar to Isaac's story, where the servant has to go to the same region, Nahar's family's descendants, to find a wife for Isaac. Now here's Jacob going to find himself a wife. But something happens on the way. One night he's camping, he lays around a stone and has this vision of God, a lot of times known as Jacob's Ladder, which, if you know what a Jacob's Ladder is, Google it. You might understand, I wonder why they called it that. This idea coming from the idea of having a vision of God. Some electricity there. But two things are interesting about this story that we're reading. One, Jacob calls the Lord, and as far as we know, he hasn't the entire time. At least it's not mentioned. So this is the first time we read about Jacob actually having a conversation or giving praise to God. But second, this is a special place now. A place for Jacob where you could say he might be believing that this is where God is. This location specifically is where you go to heaven and talk with people. And why this is important is that in the second temple, when that's built, time of Jesus, give or take, where Herod builds that great temple, what do you put in the Holy of Holies? There's no ark. So they go to this region and choose a stone, which they declare and determined, again, I can't say it isn't, that this is the stone that Jacob rested and saw his vision of God. They bring that stone and place it in the Holy of Holies. That stone is still there today. But now it's inside what's known as the Dome of the Rock. Because for Muslims, they say, and they capture the idea of that's the stone that Muhammad touched on for his vision with heaven. Again, this is the second time I brought up how Muslims will make claims to try to tie back into the story, but here's one of those points. So when you read this and you're wondering, okay, is this really that big of a deal? Well, guess what? At the time of Jesus, this story is still a big deal, because that stone from this story is used. But even today, with the different religions of this world and other religions who try to claim, hold of Abraham, they point to this story saying that we're tied to this too. So, interesting. So then Jacob moves out to his cousins / uncle, aunts. That's a whole fun discussion there. And goes and finds a wife. He finds and falls in love with Rachel. So he works 7 years to pay off his debt. And that's a fun question. If Rebekah sent Jacob to find a wife, there would have been an expectation he was given a bridal price, money, to pay for one. But by the time he gets to find good old sweet Rachel, he has no money. Interesting. So he has to work for 7 years. And they have the marriage, they have the wedding, everybody's super excited. And this great wine, when he woke up, there was Leah. Poor Leah, the older sister, the one that had eyes like a cow, which potentially could mean she was not seen as beautiful. Jacob got lied to. And now he consummated his marriage not with his love of his life, the one he worked so long for, but the older sister, the one he didn't want. So he calls out his uncle, how could you do this? And his uncle is like, well, I can't marry my second daughter off if I'll marry my first daughter. And Jacob, who we will see will love to swindle people, will be swindled into working an extra 7 years to pay off his debt to marry Rachel, which he's happy to do after 1 week getting married to her. So that's the key thing. He doesn't have to wait 7 years to then marry Rachel. He marries her and then works another 7 years to pay off his debt. So the last part of our devotion today is you see this sad exchange between wives, and their marriage. Since Jacob loved Rachel, Rachel's womb was closed, in a sense, barren. She wasn't having kids. So God opened up the womb of Leah. He had pity on her, and she had children. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and here's the last one, Judah. Judah will be the ancestor of David. He'll be the ancestor of Jesus. This promise that God had from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob will go through the wife not loved, the one with cow eyes. That's who the Messiah, that's who God's plan is going to work through, the son of Judah. So that's a cool little tidbit to think about. But then what happens for the rest of the story is the wives start competing with one another. Rachel, embarrassed that she can't have kids, then offers up her slave as somebody to sleep with Jacob, to have kids in her honor. Gee, what does that sound like? Abraham and Sarah. And then Leah has to pay with Mandrake to be able to sleep with Jacob again. And then she has kids. Then she can't have kids. And she offers up. So the point we're reading is we're seeing how through jealousy, through frustration, through will, wives trying to buy time with their husband. But again, as you read through this story, through the wife who had eyes like a cow, the one Jacob didn't want, that's who the Messiah will be born through. That's who King David will be born through. That's his ancestry. So interesting to read that. So thanks again for spending a few moments with us, and we love for you to join us Saturdays over at Noah's Ark Cafe, 8 a.m., where we talk through these devotions as we read through the Bible together. Thanks for taking time to be with us today, and just a reminder that, we're all about relationships with Jesus as we engage, grow, and share at South Lake Church. And hey, blessings, everybody.